Till they get real long, huh?
And you know, my problem is I'm not a patient person. And I sit there and listen, and listen, and listen, and grind my teeth and work crossword puzzles in order to sit in my seat. Because you hear some of the damnedest arguments why something shouldn't be done.
Oh, I bet. We hear that daily. It's always easier not to do anything.
That's true. That's true.
Toby, I guess philosophically, is there a reason that we need more consumer protection laws today than we did 20 years ago? Have you seen that need change, or was it always there and always at the same level?
Well, of course, 20 years ago we didn't have any consumer protection, and so during those years, particularly during the Kennedy years, we were able to get the Flammable Fabric Act and a few other things. We did get some consumer protections. But since that time, we have not. And we all know the marketplace has gone crazy.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but you were talking about the right to know. How many people realize that OSHA's only been around for like 20 years? You know, and it seems like it's been here forever, but it's a brief period of time compared to some of the history of the nation.
But we still don't have the community right to know
the
that.
Irons and the fire.
That's right, that's right. But it's on the back burner.
You worked on insurance fraud. There was legislation passed. I believe you worked on that one concerning insurance fraud, bank charges, ceilings on interest rates, and so forth. You want to talk
Well, of course, the banking industry now is coming under scrutiny. Mm-hmm. There are a number of banking bills that are currently going through the legislature. And I think they're going to be directed so that we don't get in the same kind of a mess as we have with the S&Ls. We currently have many of the banks taking over the S&Ls in Minnesota. And Senator Solon is the author of a couple of bills that is trying to deal with the banking problems in Minnesota. How those are going to come down doesn't seem to be apparent yet.
What about the credit unions that union people have formed and other cooperative people have formed? Isn't there some legislation changes proposed now?
There have been for a number of years to bring those credit unions under the same regulations and standards as the S&Ls.
Okay.
And so far that has not happened, but it may still come up.
Is that something that would happen in Rhode Island that they were not covered?
Without any insurance, yeah.
The ones here in Minnesota, the credit unions are insured and all that?
Well, they're insured, yeah, they have their own national insurance.
Toby, how'd you get this job with the AFL-CIO, looking out for all consumers?
By osmosis, I think.
By osmosis.
You know, I had a number. I was the president of the Minnesota Consumers League, and also was one of the founding directors of the Consumer Federation of America, and was involved in consumer issues because it hits the pocketbook.
It may be interesting for our listeners to know just how is your job funded? Who writes your paycheck and where do those monies come from?
The Minnesota AFL-CIO signs my paycheck, and that comes from the dues monies that the affiliates pay to the Minnesota AFL-CIO.
So it comes from union members.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many people are in your department?
I wish you hadn't asked that. I'm it. I'm it.
Well, who helps you out when you have to cover two committees at the same time at the legislature?
I'm a fast runner.
I know I've been up there and listened to some hearings, and often they'll have an agenda, so many bills that day, and they'll move the one that's number 6 up to number 1, and you miss the hearing at 7:30 in the morning. It takes some fast footwork.
Yes, it does, and many times the similar committees in the Senate and the House are meeting at the same time on the same bill. And so you have to determine what the agenda is at each of those meetings so that you know which one you're going to cover.
So getting back to how you got this position, did somebody come up and offer you a job, or did you start just doing work?
Well, this is going back a number of years. Dave Rowe had, time we were working on consumer issues, And Dave Rowe, who was president of the AFL-CIO at that time, was aware of my interest in consumer issues and asked me if I would handle some of those. And although I was a full-time state employee at the time, I was using my annual leave, my vacation leave, to go to the Capitol and testify.
Wow. Was this position then something new for the AFL-CIO at the time you took it, or was it?
Well, yeah, as a special position.
As a separate position?
As a separate position.
It was part of the overall.
Right. The executive officers handled it.
Where do you get your direction for what issues to work on? How do you know what to work on?
Well, of course, the AFL-CIO has an annual convention in September of each year. At that time, there are policy resolutions that come in from local unions, from central labor bodies, from councils, and based on the resolutions and the subject matter of those resolutions, it decides the policies that will be followed and sort of points the way for the legislative program.
So you're basically saying through the convention process and the delegate process, the membership themselves give you directions as to what issues they feel are important and which ones are the most important.
In other states, are there people that have similar jobs as yours, to your knowledge?
Well, I know they handle some consumer affairs. I don't know whether they have, a broad an interest as we've had in Minnesota. But then I've always said that in Minnesota, the labor movement has always been 10 light years ahead of any other state.
Well, yeah, reviewing what you're involved with, each of these items we could talk about for hours, I think. No-fault automobile insurance, the AFL-CIO, and so forth was behind that.
Right.
Introducing that to the state of Minnesota. The health care with the quality of care standards and access to the health care. I mean, these things are incredible, and it seems like you're a one-man army.
You know, what I think
to do it.
I think that was the purpose of the show of Unions and You, was to let people in the public know that unions do a lot more than just negotiate contracts or go on strike. That daily dues money is going to work to provide a decent living, not only on the job site but off the job site for all Americans. And that the idea that union workers are only out for themselves certainly doesn't fit with your role.
No.
Oh, I think union or non-union, buying a used car and getting cheated.
It's true.
Yes, and often in the office we'll get calls from people who are not members of the union and say, isn't there a law against that I get my breaks, or the employer has to do this or that? And the perception of what people think the laws have already are in the books have only been discussed.
That's right.
Yes, and they're shocked to hear that. And they'll say, well, they're sure there is a law. And I say, well, I'd be more than happy if you get the number of the statute to look it up for you. And I think there's a great deal of work to be done in what the laws are on the books and what needs to be there.
You know, now that we're coming to the close of the program, maybe I better talk about the living will.
Yeah, we've got about 2 minutes. Can we do a living will in 2 minutes?
The living will. We now have a living will in Minnesota. You've been reading all these cases where do you pull the plug or don't you pull the plug. The living will, if you file it, says what you want done.
Does that stand?
Yes.
How does a person go about doing that?
We have the forms in
That'd be
our
a live
office.
birth.
Yeah, you can, you fill out a form and file it.
And again, they can reach you at your number.
Absolutely.
Which is?
227-7647.
What do you send it to your hospital you hope to go to, or how does that
The doctor. The doctor.
To your doctor.
What happens if...
Or you can designate a family representative or somebody else as to this is what your wishes are.
So you wouldn't end up with that case somebody that went from Missouri.
That's right. That's right.
Well, now I got the tough part. Since Tom is not here, we got about 30 seconds left, so I really want to thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. I liked
It's
it.
just been incredible, and I hope we can get you back very soon. See, next week, I think we have somebody from the AFL-CIO here next week.
Christine Matusak.
Christine Matuzak, and she's involved
Education.
with education. So it ought to be another great show. And again, thank you very much for joining us.
This has been real interesting.